Well, let's discuss this further. We're joined by the South African Federation of Trade Unions General Secretary Zwelinzima Vavi. Mr. Vavi, what's clear from these numbers is that South Africa continues to struggle when it comes to creating decent work, sustainable work for especially young people, women in this country.
Absolutely. The 0.3% increase in numbers of people employed is nothing to celebrate, and does not change the picture that we are facing a structural unemployment, and we are facing and we are trapped in a low growth path, and that does not distribute wealth from the rich to the poor. And as a result of that, the black people remain the face of unemployment together with black women and the youth of our country. And as far as we can see, the bomb continues to tick, threatening to implode one day. In fact, we're arguing that bomb is already ticking if you look at the numbers of protests that are taking place around all of the major cities of our country, from Johannesburg to Cape Town, and from Cape Town to Durban. And we have cities that are now surrounded by the ring of fire. We have not solved this problem inherited from the apartheid and colonial capitalist order pre-1994. Regrettably, now 30 years into democracy, the crisis is even larger than it was before 1994.
Oh, of course, where we are today, Mr. Vavi, is a far cry from, let's say, where a document like the NDP would have given guidance in terms of where we should be, not only in a year like 2024, but especially 2023 rather, but especially if we're to meet any of the targets we've set for ourselves for 2030. And there doesn't seem to be any clear policy intervention around how to change this problem. You mentioned the fact that it is structural. So that means that there has to be some policy intervention in order to start seeing different results.
Absolutely. And someone said that if you keep on doing the same thing, producing the same results, but you keep on doing the same thing for 30 years now, that should be the sign that you are not well upstairs. Unfortunately, our government is sticking to the prescriptions of 1995-1996, what we call neoliberal prescription of a totally misplaced fiscal and monetary policy, a monetary policy that is driven by removing exchange control, doing nothing about illicit cash outflows, and employing a totally inappropriate inflation targeting policy of between 3 and 6%, which you can only realize by using a blunt instrument of high interest rates. And it is the high interest rates that is driving the economy to underperform to the levels that we have seen over the past 2 decades at least. That's your first problem. Our monetary policies are simply wrong. And secondly, the fiscal policies are totally misplaced and wrong for a country with these developmental challenges that we are facing as a country. Firstly, you can't just continue to drive the tax paid by the corporates down from 53-54% on the eve of democracy to 27% today. You cannot just continue to punish the poor and make them to pay for their own development by introducing a VAT and increase that VAT midterm over the past 30 years. And you cannot continue to just employ the fiscal policies of what they call fiscal consolidation. You're cutting expenditure when you should be employing more resources to address the stagnation in the economy. You cannot impose an investment strike both in the private and in the public sector. We were looking at the figures this day. They're showing that between 2015 and today, government have have disinvested by 38%. The private sector have disinvested by about 54–55% in just a few years that we are counting. There is an effective investment strike by both the public sector and the private sector. You need to have an investment level of around 24–25% to at least have a growth levels of about 5–6%. Unfortunately, because we are employing what the rating agencies say we must do, we now have an investment rating that is about 15–16%. This is a disaster. There will be no economic growth. There will be no employment generation. We will not defeat the triple crisis of poverty, inequality, and unemployment.
Ultimately, what we sit with as a country is that we have the majority of our young people sitting at home unemployed, because if we look at the expanded definition of unemployment, of course, the figures we're looking at get much worse because it takes into account those that are not even looking for jobs anymore. They've completely tapped out of the system. How do we ensure that those young people can be given hope about the kind of future that they have in this country? And what one thing do you think can be done today, if given the opportunity, that would change their prospects?
I mean, what we thought that South Africa will do, motivated by not just the Freedom Charter economic demands and the RTP, was that we're going to have to embark on massive developmental programs. We had thought that there will be a massive housing brigade program. We will be a massive program to build infrastructure, bridges, roads in the rural areas, and that there will be massive injection in our agriculture in the rural areas and including building technicons and universities in the Northwest and in the former Transkei, so that our people can use what is regarded as the second richest land in the whole world. Look at today, we have a Northwest sitting on that rich land, but having an unemployment rate of 53%. The Eastern Cape and the Limpopo have been leading with 52–53% unemployment, and at least now things seem to be getting better. The biggest employment gains in this second quarter are coming from Limpopo, and it is driven, I think, by the commodity booms and the mining activities. But our problems are structural. We need to do something about the fact that we're dominated by mining, finance, and heavy chemicals. We are deindustrializing. We're not building the manufacturing base. We're not beneficiating our minerals in South Africa. We are allowing everything to be exported raw for 30 years, and may I say, for over 300 years under the colonial era. And therefore, we're not going to get out of this problem until the government gets convinced that we're facing a structural problem.
SAFTDU's Zwelinzima Vavi there.